Just an announcement that we, at the gift shop, we have books by Pak Gunawan Muhammad, and also the book Writing the Modern by T.K. Sabapati. So if you're interested to get the book, they'll be there. Okay, thank you for coming back. I don't know whether there's the actual tea, but I hope that you're warmed up now. So we'll continue with this session. Earlier, Prof. Sabapati he took us into Cambodia. So we extend this session with Prof. Somporn, who will take us into journeys of Laos and Bangkok, Thailand. Will give us a bit of insight to trace some of the places and the people that Pak Latiff has seen. This section, let me introduce a bit of Prof. Somporn. She's a faculty at Chiang Mai University and also sitting at the board of directors at Chiang Mai University. She's an independent curator. Past involvement with curatorial works include the Asian Modernism, diverse development in Indonesia, the Philippines, and Thailand. That was in 1995. The birth of modern art in Southeast Asia, artist and movement in Fukuoka Asian Art Museum. So she curated that as well. And she was also co-curator for the first and third APT. She's written extensively on Thai art and artists. In a conversation with her, she mentioned that it was important to keep writing because it is also a source of encouragement for artists. And she's also advocating for female artists to, so that by writing about them, they can find more courage in their art. This second last segment would take us into The Moment Returns. Pak Latiff, if I may read an excerpt from the poem. This is borrowed by the poem The Moment Returns. It's translated in English by Saleh Ben Jonah. The moment returns. An empty room without a lamp. I'm lying down on the floor in Vientiane. The air is damp. Luang Prabang. It seems you are thousands of miles behind me, and I can no longer remember the face of the child and the sampan. Here it's dust everywhere, and I can hear the soldiers walking to and fro at the edge of the yard. A lone mosquito bumps against my brow. So this photo, as you notice on page 22 in this booklet, we've reproduced the photo, is a photo of, you can find Pak Latiff somewhere in this photograph. I think he stands out there. It's Pak Latiff met the headmaster of the school, École des Beaux-Arts, in 1966. So just now when we heard about from T.K. Sabapati in 1966, it was also during the period where he started the École sketches. So you can see the link here. I'll pass the mic to Prof. Somporn Rodboon to talk more about this period of time as what she understood from her father.
Okay, first of all, I would like to say good afternoon to everyone, and I would like to thank the National Gallery. I would like to thank the National Gallery Singapore, Mustafa, the team there for helping me sorting out my slides, and her, chairing the session. Yeah. So what I'm going to talk about will be focused on art in Laos during the 60s. because that was a time that my father was there. Well, actually, you might be wondering how come, he's a Thai person and then went to Laos to became the headmaster of the art school. Actually, before he went to Laos, he was teaching at art and craft school in Bangkok. And during that time, Laos lack of experts who could help with publishing texts for school. So my father was selected or maybe chosen to go to Laos to do this kind of job. But that was during 1962. And when he was there, well, not only by the invitation of the Lao government, but also with the support from USAID, and that's the abbreviation for United States Agency for International Development. So he was there for 13 years. That was a long time, and he really fell in love with Lao people and the country, and also, the culture. Well, actually, modern art in Laos was developed in order to keep pace with neighboring countries. The influence from Lao government policy was key part in supporting and controlling art education in Laos at the time. And my father was there since 1962 and stayed there until 1975. And when he was there, Laos was called Lao Kingdom. But then toward the end of around 1975, the government was changed because of the leftist party, and the communists took over. Then my father had to leave the country because it wasn't all that safe. One of the incident happened was he had to leave immediately because of the bombshell that went through the building where he lived. And the Thai embassy thought, it's time to go. So the Thai embassy helped him, and also my mom, to cross the river back to the border of Thailand. That was in the northeastern part of the country. However, when he was in Laos, what he did right from the beginning was he worked at Ministry of Education, helping out with the section that produced educational texts, and he did some illustrations for the book. And later on, the School of Art or Art Institute at the time invited him to teach. And when my father taught there, during that time, there were, nothing to do with the modern art. So he, with the support from the Lao government, he set up a new curriculum for the Art Institute there. And before my father set up the new curriculum, what the subjects that they taught in school at the time were traditional art, folk art, and mainly, painting, focusing on ornaments and things. And they also taught subjects like weaving and some silver work, and also, some traditional sculpture. But my father thought that was a bit old-fashioned, so since he came from Bangkok, where we had two art institutions like Art and Craft School and Silpakorn University, so he started to combine the curriculum from both places in order to make it more proper in learning arts, and that would sort of lead to modern art at the time. And what he brought up for the curriculum, he introduced both theories and practical work. For theories, he introduced first art history, because in art institution in Laos at the time, they didn't have any art history courses. And then he offered anatomy course, and that would be for drawing and perspective, for doing landscape painting, something along that line. And also he introduced art composition, and it's art criticism. And for practical work, he included oil painting, watercolor painting, as well as woodcut print. And that's how art education in Laos started to become level up the art courses in Bangkok. And during that time, not only my father taught different courses in art, he also did a number of things for the Lao government, like design stamps and design stamp for Laos, and I think he did about 15 sets altogether. And apart from that, he also published a book, must be the very first book on Lao Buddhist art. And it has been republished 3 times already. Unfortunately, it's not in English, but only in Thai. But then it's also very useful for Lao people, because Lao can read Thai though. And what I would like to show, maybe you talk along the slides I show. Went back, please. And this is the drawing class that my father conducted. So students really had to draw from real objects or from real life, or they go out painting or drawing landscape. They had to go to the actual site to practice their skill. And but this one here, students are drawing head of a Buddha image. And before that, there wasn't anything like this. Then, okay. He also recorded the scenery in Laos during the 60s, and this is his watercolor painting of a village somewhere in Vientiane, and this is also watercolor painting of a scene of pagoda, seeing from across the field. Next, please. And this is the canal with boats. Yeah. Well, it was a bit more like recording the scenery and sort of life in Vientiane at the time. Yes. And this is also a temple which is very similar to Thai temple. And what he did, this is a drawing that he produced for his book, Buddhist Lao, Buddhist art in Laos, and he actually went to the site and started to sketch and then drew the pictures, which I think Latiff probably is familiar with this, because Lao pagodas got different kind of shapes, which are quite interesting, and some of them I even found somewhat similar to Latiff's painting. Next, please. And this is another one. Okay, yeah, yes. Yeah, and this is the top of pagodas, different kind of styles in Laos. And this is the one that I thought, you know, Latiff would be interesting. It would be interested to see. Yeah. And this is the stamp for Laos that he produced. And that was during the time there was a big flood in Vientiane. Next, please. And that's the part of the stamps that he designed for Lao government, for, you know, actually for different occasions, and also different kind of species and flowers. Here, I think what he did a lot of things for the Lao government. So toward the end, that was before communists took over. He got commendation for contribution to intellectual and educational development in Laos, and this is the เจ้ามหาชีวิต สีสว่างวง that's the name of the king at the time, that he recognized what my father did, and then he got this decoration. Next, please. So not only my father who was a driving force for setting up the art curriculum, but also, you know, it was the time that modern art began to rise in Laos. And there was another person. He's a French artist who came to Vientiane in 1947. His name is, I can't pronounce French correctly, but it's a bit more like Marc Legray, something like that. Excuse my French. And this is the mural painting he painted, and now it is being kept at the National Art Institute in Laos. It's a huge painting, and it's the scenery of Lao people. Next, please. And this is more details on top of the painting. So he was in Laos for many years, and then he could understand culture and people, and even, you know, the future of people there. And this is a detail of one of a woman in the painting. Okay. And so I really had a lot of problems trying to find images of Lao painting during the 60s, simply because most of artists during that time, they didn't record the year they produced the work. And nothing much was done about keeping records of the development of Lao art. So what I'm going to show you now would just some examples, but I can't really tell you exactly the date. But what I did, I looked at the year that the artists were born, and I think it was roughly the time when Latiff was born as well. so that should be about the period where modern art started to rise. So these are some of the examples of Lao artists produced during the 60s. And subject matters were mainly landscape or, gen scenes of villages and things like that. Yeah. So this is one of the tradition culture that people would sort of pour water on the Buddha image, and very similar to Thai as well. But for Thai people, we just sprinkle the water, but then in Lao they pour water on the Buddha image. Yeah, this is just to show you, how Lao women are dressed, how they dressed up themselves. Yeah. And this is a woman, a villager who, she's carrying some sort of bamboo thing, this is for smoking. And then the women during that time always put the babies on the back. I find, these paintings quite refreshing and sincere. They, artists at the time, they didn't know anything about Impressionists yet. Nothing except realistic art, and that they considered, something quite modern for the country at the time. Before that was just traditional art, mainly ornaments and things. Yeah. And this one is quite interesting. This is painted by a woman artist who is now about 70, and that was in the 1975, when communists took over. And this is the house that was being bombed. So you see, it's not in such a good condition. And this is how the artist recorded what happens during that time. And this is another traditional activities that they did for religious purpose. And this is a scene of a woman selling fruits. Yeah. Also another traditional activities regarding Buddhist belief. And this is supposed to be a man working in the rice field. You see a figure and then a buffalo, but this was done toward the end of the 60s. And this was painted by the same woman that painted the house we looked at a while ago. And I think she wanted to record what happened during the political turmoil in Vientiane, and whatever happened, you see a lot of symbolic figures, children or those who were dead, caused by bomb shells. Mm-hmm. And this one, a bit more modern than the rest that you have seen. It was done by one of the students of my father, and it's supposed to be, something to do with a political problems in Vientiane at the time, and so he was using snakes or what do you call it, reptile or something, to represent the violence. Yeah. This is another one, also focused on the same kind of political situation where which caused a disaster to Lao people and the country. Yes. And it's supposed to be circus, but not really circus. But there's some kind of underlying meaning in the work, and it has a lot to do with what was happening during that time in Laos as well. And now from Laos, we come to Bangkok, and that was in the 1964, where Latiff went to Bangkok and stayed with a Thai artist, a very famous Thai artist, Tawan Dachani. And sorry, could you? Okay, and in the background was supposed to be a painting by Tawan. Do you remember? Okay. Right. Next, and this is Latiff and Tawan Dachani. Yeah. Well, during that time, Tawan was kind of poor, so he just rented a room, a small room, in the slum area, and that's where he lived and produced his paintings. And Latiff stayed with him, right? For how long? 1 year. That long enough. Next, please. Yeah. So this is also in Tawan's room. Yeah. And that's how Pago started, right? Yeah. And that was in Bangkok, also the same old place, of Tawan's place. Mm-hmm. And this is the one you talked about. Well, this is quite powerful. Now, the work is called Worship, and now it is in the collection of Fukuoka Asian Art Museum. Yeah. Well, he also did another version, but I couldn't get the photo because it was in one of the banks there, and I wasn't allowed to take the photo. So that was it. But very similar to these, yeah. But not so many men around like this, yeah. But this is just to show how art during Latiff's was in Bangkok, and it was the time that not just what Tawan produced, but also abstract art began to show up, began to rise. Yes. Yeah. This is another Tawan. So Latiff, when you were there, you also took off your shirt and saw Tawan, because the weather was really hot and humid. You can't simply put a lot of clothes, and did the work. Yeah, this is another painting, more paintings by Tawan. I was unable to get, just different paintings, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I don't know what he did with the paintings. So this is the photographs that I could get from his son. Yeah. Okay, next. And that someone is drawing what's the boat scene. That's Latiff. Would you be able to recognize him? and with children watching, they must be very curious, what Latiff was doing there at the time. Yes. This is the scene at Chao Phraya River in Bangkok. And also, Latiff was introduced to another artist, also very famous, called Damrong Wong Uparat. Yeah. And I think he just got back from the United States. Yeah. And then maybe I'd like to show, his work during the period that Latiff was there in Bangkok. Next, please. Oh, okay, then Latiff had an exhibition. Was it first time in Bangkok? That was at Bangkapi Gallery, which was a private, among the first private galleries in Thailand. And the interesting thing is that the owner of the place was a policeman, but he educated abroad, and his family was also very well educated, and he realized that art was very important. So he thought that not just see the significance of the artwork, but also he was looking from the business side, and he started to collect work, and then had exhibitions there. I mean, he runs the place and he organized exhibitions himself. So and during that time, the 60s in Bangkok, that was the time that was the time of galleries boom. Art market also boomed, and also collectors. We got more collectors, but before that, hardly anything at all. And artists would get opportunity to exhibit their work only, via the National Art Exhibition, which started in 1949. Yeah, and most of artists at the time just wanted to have freedom, to exhibit their work. They didn't want to depend on the National Art Exhibition. So that's why, they first had an art space, which we could call it artist-run gallery. Yeah, and then Bangkapi Gallery came after. Mm-hmm. And this is Damrong's work. See, but before he went to the United States, he painted the scene of fisherman village, and but without human figures, just the architectural elements. But it still shows that life still going on. Yeah, but then when he went to the United States, and he really admired the painting by the New York school. So when he came back, he brought the influence back to Thailand, and more or less, introduced abstract art to Thai art circle. And this is one of the paintings. Yeah, this is also his. It's a bit more like minimalism, minimal art, yeah, abstract. Yeah, this is another piece of his. Mm-hmm. And this is Prapansi Sutta. Yeah, he also was closely associated with Latiff, and his main technique would be woodcut prints. And this just shows the life of our villagers. And he actually came from the north of Thailand. Yeah. So this is about it, because actually I'm not an expert in Lao art. not really, and not much research has been done. So I just sort of gathered from my father's information, and also did some reading, and also looked at a book on Latiff that Mustafa published. Yeah. So, well, this is just an introduction to Lao art. I'm so sorry that I'm not an expert, so I can't really tell you more. But I promise after this I will do more research on Lao art. Particularly the contemporary ones are quite interesting. Yeah.
It's interesting in Bangkok Gallery that we have a solo exhibition of Latiff, Mohidin, and as well. Is it quite? I reckon it's not very common during that time.
No, it's quite rare. He probably be the first one who exhibited his work there, right? Yeah. He knows better than I, because during that time I was still young.
We can open up the session to comments or questions, even if Pak Latiff wants to, if you want comments or any questions during this period, maybe.
I'll try my best, because I don't speak English at home, so I find it not easy to speak in front of a lot of people.
Thank you, Professor, for showing us Laos art, according to your knowledge and your relationship with your dad. You did show a series of slides on maize because of traditional of the stupa, the Buddhist head and whatnot, statue images. Then later on, you have this younger Thai person doing New York school art. So how is this the mixture, again, the duality and the interaction, and then the response?
You
yeah.
mean in
the reception, yeah.
Oh, in Bangkok?
Yes, of that New York school.
Well, it wasn't all that well accepted at the beginning, because people during that time, even myself, thought that we were much more familiar with realistic art, impressionist, or even cubistic art, But when a couple of Thai artists are the same generation as Damrong Uparat went to the United States, sponsored by some kind of scholarship or something, and then when they came back, they started to have their work exhibited, and it wasn't all that well accepted. But it you know how Thai people are, they're easygoing and they accept nearly anything at all, and it didn't take long, for people there to get more familiar with abstract art. And even now, they still practice quite a bit of abstract art in Bangkok and elsewhere in Thailand.
You were mentioning earlier about the art market booming during that time. Was the collectors mainly from Thailand?
Yeah, well, not Thai collectors, of course, because they were not all that much interested in art during that time. But the art that they would buy would be like Canal scene, things like that, It's sort of for decoration, but nothing depth in meaning. Collectors during that time would be mainly foreigners who run business in Bangkok, or foreigners, tourists, or people from cultural institutes from abroad, like German Cultural Institute or Japan Foundation and things like that. But I must say that Thai artists during that time also struggled quite a bit, because they didn't sell work very well. So most of the galleries opened up and closed, and new open and closed again and again. Not so stabilized.
Thank you. I should ask Ate, but I was wondering how his work being exhibited in Bangkok. How was the promotion? How was the response, and how much money he got from that?
Yeah, because he would know best.
Maybe what kind of social support of the art at the time and now?
Now?
And during Latiff's visit. Was there real...
the comparison between that time and this time. This time artists are doing quite well. They don't have to exhibit the work, like artists in the north, particularly in Chiang Mai and Chiang Rai, they just do their painting comfortably in their studios, and people come and just collect the work. And they sell very well.
When Latiff was exhibiting his work, how did you do the promotion?
Yeah.
I try to remember. That's 50 years ago.
Already?
50? Yeah. All of Papago was half a century ago. 66, yeah?
True.
Yeah. Anyway, after staying 6 months, 9 months in Bangkok, Tawan showed me this Bangapi gallery for my work to show. And at that time, I think nobody sponsored. I and Tawan put, get our money from our pocket deep to sponsor the exhibition. And there was no sale at the first time. At that time, I think Bangkok was just starting to exhibiting, and there was a lot of younger artists who were exhibiting, sponsored by American, by Japanese, by German institution. So I don't know much about selling and buying, but at the end of the day, I think someone bought one painting. That's all.
Well.
And what kind of language did you use with that one? You spoke English to everything?
Sign language.
Tarzan.
I mean, even I studied abroad, when I come back, I still can't speak English properly. Particularly when I get excited, I can't reverse my thought from Thai to English fast enough. Yes, please.
The focus is, of course, Latiff in Vientiane, and in the school in which your father was the director or head teacher. When you showed the illustration by your father's hand on architectural drawings of the stupa forms and other forms, I'm wondering whether this is slightly off Latiff, but I think still connected because it goes back to Bangkok, whether your father's interest in the traditions of Laos also, I'm wondering what connections with Bangkok and Farochi and what he
yes. Because
what he advocated about the duality, of the modern being not turning its back completely from the indigenous past, or if I can use that word, indigenous, and as to how the two, as Gunawan talked about earlier, maybe either synthesized, I think you used the word synthesized, or brought together is another matter. But do you think he had something comparable like this to Farochi's vision?
Well, actually, Well, both of them know each other, and
yeah.
then they worked together on different occasions.
Yeah.
And my father was very open during his time. He studied quite a bit about Western art. I mean, he studied himself, and also along with the traditional art. And he published maybe 4 or 5 books on Buddhist art in Thailand, from different periods. And the illustration in the book would also, come from his own drawing. And another thing which I forgot to mention is that he and Feroz Sinpirasi got something similar in setting up the new curriculum, even in Silpakorn University or in Laos. That was introduce the Western academic Western art academic system, and also both of them encouraged. For my father, encouraged the Lao students to focus on the traditional art as well, because he believed that one shouldn't forget his own roots. But when they study traditional art, they are supposed to understand thoroughly the style and the concept. And also when they produce their own artwork, they have to reinterpret or recreate from the traditional to modern or whatever that the artist aims to do. Does it make sense?
Yes, and it does, because the other side from Vientiane, say, to Hanoi, because something comparable also emerged in these. Well, Vientiane and Hanoi was under the French umbrella, yeah.
Yeah, right.
So
yes.
The academy in Hanoi had a blueprint, which I think could be set right beside what you are describing.
Mm-hmm.
And if one wants to talk about a historical nexus that traverses or some parts of the region. Here we are talking about Siam or Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam, and probably Phnom Penh in Cambodia. They are connected with this sort of transfer of the imperial educational regimes to the local, and how they tried to either integrate it or localize it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, because some of the Lao art students, after finishing the school in Laos, they got scholarship from USAID, to further go to Vietnam to further their study, for higher education in arts. So they sort of mixed, yeah.
So Vietnam was still the big brother that side.
Yeah, Thailand too. Yeah.
Hello, maybe you can touch a bit on Latiff's interest in the Thai literary or poems, because he did translate a few of Thai poems into Malay.
Latiff. Oh, yes, yes. There were a good number of Thai poets, and some of them, like Tawan, for instance, he also wrote poetry and some literal work, and he was quite good as well. Yeah. Did he tell you anything about this when you were there in Bangkok?
As far as I can remember, at that time, most of the Thai poets were still writing in the form on the form of traditional poetry with certain structure. I remember there's a oi in the back, which is actually a oi. This is a traditional form of the poem, and there was one artist by the name of Chang
Tang.
Tang.
Yep.
He is absolutely different. He was doing what we call now a concrete poetry in Thai, in Thai form, the form of Thai traditional. But he was almost interested in sound rather than the words. And then that is extreme. And Taiwan and his artist friends, all of them artist painters, had a collection of modern, so-called modern poetry in Thailand. And I was quite surprised and amused that the artists were doing the whole revolutionized modern poetry in Thailand instead of the writers. And that was very interesting. Yeah.
For Chang Tang, the way he wrote poetry was a bit more conceptual.
Conceptual,
yeah. So I, in my opinion, I think he was the very first one who wrote conceptual poetry.
But Thai and Taiwanese group, these are the new poet come artists, or artists come poets. They were writing about everything, like what's happening in the streets and like that. I was quite amazing at that time. And then after the first collection, which I managed to translate into Malay, I think one or two, and then the other writers took over the. But he was really the first writers poets painter who opened up the new form of modern Thai poetry. Thank you.
Yeah. But there was another one who was my father's, he was my father's former classmate. That was Angkan Galayanapong. Yeah. He was a painter, and also, he wrote poetry.
I think it's very obvious that Park Latiff actually loves interacting with artists and poets from different locations. So my question perhaps to him would be, what are some of your criteria for people you love working with or discussing about art, about life? I think it seems to me that is quite important part of his art thinking and art making process, being able to speak to artists or poets, whether in Vientiane, in Bangkok, or even in Singapore. So maybe the questions would be to two of you. Thank you.
What was the
Because I just wanted him to engage. Because I'm feeling it.
I still quite. Can you explain what about Can you repeat again, please? Sorry.
Okay, so for you in your travels, you discuss quite a lot, and you are quite good friends with a lot of artists and poets, whether in Bangkok or in Vientiane. So what are some of your criteria for selecting who you want to be friends with, who you want to discuss art with? I mean, who are the people you like, and why are you friends with them? And so that's part of my question.
It's a bit difficult why I'm friends. There must be some magnet. You make friends and you talk about. Yeah, I just click.
You just clicked, right?
One thing leads to another. They talk about daily life, they talk about art, and they come poetry and things like that. And so naturally, when you talk, and you tend also to express your feelings, so you write down. So it goes on like that for some time, and some of them become serious poets later on. Why not? But for me, of course, I paint daytime, at night. I become a poet. No writing. So these are very rich. I think combination of image and words, isn't it? Yeah, there are a lot of mystery there. It's all very wonderful.
Okay, we just to add on to this, I think Pak Gunawan reminded me of he talked about Sufism, and it reminded me of this quote, old Sufi proverb that says, people who are like-minded, they smell each other like horses. They one may be from the east and from the west, but they somehow find themselves in the gathering of one room. So the old will be eagerly talking to the young, and the young will be learning from the old, as if there's no difference. So I think this is one thing that I think the spirit of meeting your allies or whatsoever, or even the spirit of gathering in this room, I think we must have smelled each other like horses. Okay. Okay, can we maybe we can talk more in person. So thank you very much for this session. We recall some moments of Vientiane and Bangkok. So we can see some of these beautiful photographs, in the cabinet there as well. So yeah, thank you very much, Prof. Somporn, for sharing with us.